It's all about the neuroscience of high-performing leaders. I'm Zainab Al for those who don't know, and I'm the Executive Director for the Global Chamber London and also the founder of Result Consulting. This year, I wanted to start strong, not with a hustle, but with presence, with clarity, emotional focus, and a grounded performance. That's why today's session is so close to my heart. Um, I've personally benefited from breath work. It's what centers me when life or leadership gets intense, and I'm sure you can all relate. It helps me process pressure, and I can show up with clarity without the chaos. And so I'm thrilled to be joined by someone who has mastered this field, the formidable Rob Rea. Rob is one of the most respected voices in conscious leadership and high performing breathwork in UK. He's worked with leaders in finance, law, tech, and I am so pleased to have him here with us in this powerful work that he does, and welcome him into this organization. He's helped many organizations and companies scale their way. And as such, I'm just going to say hello, Rob. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much, Zainab, for such a wonderful introduction. I'm not sure if I've mastered peace, but will give it a go. Hello, everybody else. I really appreciate you tuning in from across the world. I heard there someone it's at 8:30 at night for some of you. So I really, yeah, I'm hugely grateful for you to take this time to listen to me. My name's Rob Rea. I was actually born and I'm brought up in Northern Ireland in Belfast and went a very traditional route, I suppose, initially. I finished university back in, feels like a very long time ago now, 2006, and went straight into finance. And whenever I was working in finance, which took me actually right through to 2012, I was working 12 and 15-hour days. My life was extremely hectic in the sense of international travel, um, intense deadlines, um, having to work with both customers, having to manage up, having to manage down, and quite a lot of intense pressure, which I loved. And I will always say to my clients that pressure is a privilege, makes diamonds. And it's not something that I necessarily want to get rid of. However, I was exposed to the world of stillness or the world of introspection initially through yoga. And I don't know if any of you practice or have practiced yoga. They work with what is called pranayama. Prana usually meaning breath or life force. There are different meanings for prana. And yam, which is yama, which is control. So the idea of pranayama is control of your breath, control of your life force. And I remember on my honeymoon, now coming back nearly 14 years ago, I had as part of the package the chance to work with a pranayama teacher every single morning. And if you can imagine, at that time, I was a 26-year-old type A personality, uh, really wanted to be and continue being a human doing as opposed to a human being. And I always like to make sure that my practice involved sweating or somehow making myself feel like I had achieved in that 1 hour space. And I'll come on to that, but this idea of the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment has started to really kind of play in my mind over the next decade. And I got this wonderful opportunity to practice pranayama every single morning. And initially, there was a huge amount of resistance for me whenever I was sat down and asked to just be still. to experience the breath, to experience my emotions that were in the body, and to use the breath as a vehicle to speak into the nervous system. That honeymoon finished after 2 weeks, and I decided to dive in a little bit deeper to pranayama initially. And for 3 years, I actually worked with that teacher to understand a little bit deeper the yogic science behind the breath and body, which led me to live in Los Angeles in the States for a while and work with freedivers and surfers who were this wonderful bridge between science and spirituality. These guys obviously need to work really hard to build their lung capacity. They also need to work really hard to manage their emotions if they are 20 meters underwater. They need to make sure there's an efficient release of oxygen in their body, and they need to make sure that they aren't stressing out too much whenever whenever they are under the water. So I got to learn very much what would be called performance breath work with these guys. And this was very much the I suppose the Western science around it, what is happening in carbon dioxide and oxygen whenever we're doing these breath holds or breathing in a certain way or breathing with a certain cadence. And I moved to New York quite soon after that, and experienced different types of meditation, from Vipassana to TM, and a non-dual inquiry, which is, I suppose, where I've settled to with my practice. So that's my kind of journey, I suppose, to up until about the pandemic, whenever I started to share a lot more about this type of work. And having come from a corporate background, a lot of my network would work within the corporate space, and they started to see some of the stuff that I was posting about how the breath can be a conduit into the nervous system, and we experience the world around us through the lens of our nervous system. And therefore, how by using the breath we can affect our experience of the world, experience of ourselves, and the experience of people around us. So they started to ask me to do a few more talks, I suppose, a bit like this, but with companies and with individuals. And then people started, whenever I did those talks to a wider audience, people started to ask, how to implement this type of work in their day-to-day on a one-to-one basis. I started then coaching or guiding or working with some people, and it's kind of snowballed from there. So that's my journey in Zainab. I hope that it wasn't too boring for people.
Not at all, Robert. It's fascinating because you've worked across and you come from an intense sector. And it's interesting that this is where you fell into breathwork. And I wonder whether from working with legal, finance, corporate tech companies, what were you seeing in leaders that needed to shift?
Very much there was a desire and an appeal from their point of view to understand themselves a little bit deeper. Whenever I say that, they came to me not necessarily to heal themselves or to fix themselves in some sort of way, but actually to understand how they could eke out a little bit more from themselves, how they could understand themselves on a deeper level. Because whenever we work together, really it's all about the person rather than their interactions with the outside world. What we found is whenever we can start to deepen the self connection of one, of course it's a byproduct that your connections with others start to improve, and you start to understand other people on a deeper level. So it was arranged, Zainab, and as you said, it's the legal sector, the tech sector, finance is a huge one that I work with.
Yeah.
And just last week, I was in at the O2, speaking to 500 or 600 employees of a tech company on, I suppose, around this, how we can start to use the breath to affect our sleep, which is stage 3 sleep's probably the biggest performance enhancing drug that is on the market. Just allowing our body the conditions to access stage 3 sleep. And breath, nutrition, and movement are three of the kind of key pillars into being able to set the best conditions for somebody to repair, to regenerate, to learn. And so yeah, we can kind of look at it a range of different ways. So often it might be that a leader of a business may come and they may be feeling like they've reached the pinnacle of their particular space, industry or company, and they maybe don't feel that fulfillment. And this is the kind of science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's trying to understand, well, what is it that we're feel like we're missing, or how can we deepen or uh, enrichen our experience on the day to day. Or it can be, of course, okay, Rob, I need to get my heart rate variability up. Heart rate variability for people who haven't kind of been exposed to this kind of wellness speak, HRV is a huge indicator for how robust our nervous system is, and therefore how robust our immune system is. And it's shown to see how flexible our emotional system is. So whenever we talk about that, how able are we to be in a meeting whenever someone says something particularly provoking or upsetting for you in that meeting? How able are you to kind of get peaked and then come back into some sort of baseline anchor state? And that starts with the awareness of, well, where am I within that kind of window initially?
Yeah.
And this would lead me to speak, around sympathetic and parasympathetic. These are the sympathetic, nothing to do with sympathy, is like your fight or flight state of the autonomic nervous system. Parasympathetic is your rest and digest, neither of which are the devil, let's say, neither of which are the ones that we're trying to get away from. A lot of people say, oh, I can't be in sympathetic state because that's fight or flight, and all, that's not a good state to be in. We need both. Like, we're homeostatic beings. We need to find balance within everything. The idea is that we're able to travel between the two. We're able to peak up into sympathetic, and sympathetic comes with a physiological response. That physiological response is heart starting to beat very fast, veins, capillaries, arteries starting to close a little bit because the body's getting flooded with cortisol, which is your stress hormone, adrenaline, because evolutionarily we would have needed and all of adrenaline and stress hormones out into the muscles because we were running away from the proverbial tiger or the lion that was chasing us. Obviously, now we're for most of us living in the lives that we're living, we're not running away from that tiger or that lion. The tiger or the lion now is the email that comes in at 7 a.m. before your brain waves have even woken up. It's the text that comes. It's interpersonal relationships. It's romantic relationships. It's your children. It's your family. It's your parents. And all these stressors, if I can put it that way, they are the tiger or the lion that's chasing you. But the problem is that we live in this kind of space where we're chronically in sympathetic state because we get pinged by emails, WhatsApp, all of the social media stuff that we can talk about all day long.
Yeah.
And if we're in that state all the time, then that's the lens through which we're experiencing the world, life. If you're in a sympathetic state, generally what happens is our prefrontal cortex is actually going offline. Prefrontal cortex is our thinking brain. This is our rational, logical brain that we need to be online, particularly in moments of problem solving or in a meeting whenever you're having a negotiation. or whenever you're with a customer. And if you're in that sympathetic state, it literally gets bypassed. And that's why sometimes you can practice all you want for, a talk like this. And whenever the moment comes, you go blank and you're like, why didn't I say anything in that moment? There's a physiological reason for that. And that reason is that the prefrontal cortex gone offline and the emotional center has lit up. And then all of a sudden you start to kind of connect into all those times you've been embarrassed or felt not ready or felt rejected. And this is kind of really exciting that effective neuroscience is now almost linking up with pranayama, yoga, or breath work that we know from a spiritual standpoint has been seen as intuitively phenomenally good for us. And
Mm.
yet and the science and the neuroscience and the psychology is now kind of joining up with it. And we're able then to bring it into interpersonal relationships, be that in work or in personal life, romantic relationships,
Yeah.
and particularly where I've kind of done a lot of my work within the corporate landscape,
Mm.
because it can be so valuable for
Yeah.
teams and leaders and people to start to understand themselves before they even start to go out into the wider team and trying to understand why that person said that. It's like, was I already in a kind of stressed, sympathetic state that email that came in triggered something that it didn't warrant the response that I gave it. It was because of all the other little things that had happened through the day. And,
Mm.
and it's sorry, I just in case you're wanting to ask me anything, I promise I'll be quiet in 1 second. But there's one other thing that I would say is that these stressors aren't necessarily always bad. It's not like it's an argument with the girlfriend or your best friend, or it can also be, training really hard first thing in the morning,
Mm.
then having two coffees, then jumping into the ice bath and doing all the good stuff that you think is really, really good for you. These are all good stressors, but they're still stressors. They still physiologically get it received in the same way. So, particularly working with a lot of CEOs, they're incredibly highly disciplined. And so they're getting up sometimes because the only time they can is 5 a.m. They can do their workout from 5 to 6. Then they check the markets. Then they're having those coffees. Then they're doing the sauna or whatever. And by 7 a.m. they're on their emails. And
Yeah.
then they're back to back for 12 hours in meetings.
Yeah.
And not at not one point through that day is there almost like a recovery reset built in, which is what I try to help them with. To,
Mm.
to, to say that not all exercise is brilliant, not all ice baths are great. It depends where you are. It depends what you've got going on in your life. And that's, I suppose, the landscape, trying to step back out of it and say, okay, well, we're in January now. It's a brilliant time to be kind of taking stock. What does my next quarter look like? Where are my big moments? Should I really be packing full that week whenever I've got that really big thing on Tuesday? Is there a way that I can give myself some down regulation?
Yeah, I mean that's powerful, Rob, and that you've said such golden nuggets here. Now I've had to take notes of the things that you've said because actually, if we are to integrate them to calm our nervous system, it will reduce the chain of causation, as it were, from that trigger you got from that email or from that comment you heard, or even as a leader to get you to, understand those aspects in order for you to perhaps introduce this to your teams to reduce stress and increase focus because it's been proven to do exactly that scientifically. Now, we're not just here to listen. We're here to experience this for ourselves. Rob, you've helped leaders achieve incredible results through breathwork. Would you please walk us through a few simple techniques we can all apply in our daily lives? And I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everybody. We would love to give this a go right here with you whilst you're with us, especially perhaps to regulate stress. sharpen focus and reset. Those were the demands of the attendees before they come to this workshop. They'd ask me to sort of relay that to you. Um, and
Okay.
if I could ask everybody to mute, that would be amazing. If you could take over, Rob.
Yes, absolutely. Um, it would be a pleasure actually to take you through a couple of techniques. I'm going to do two techniques, I think. The first one, some of you might have practiced before. It's called box breath. And this is breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Box breath, I could talk a little bit about after as well, but just to kind of set the stage for it. Um, the Navy SEALs use it actually as their way to bring their teams and their people into parasympathetic state. So I work with a golfer as well who uses it before he goes on to the first tee, um, to sometimes tens of thousands of people and many more million on television. And it's actually one of my go-tos because of the simplicity of it. And there are some holds, breath holds during it. Now, we're going to be breathing what's called a 4 second box, which means we inhale for 4 seconds, we hold for 4 seconds, we exhale for 4 seconds, and we hold for 4 seconds. And these holds are completely safe for anyone. Just to say that 3 or 4 seconds is absolutely fine. I've got a 16-month-old at home, and my wife was doing box breath all the way through her pregnancy as well, on 4 second boxes. So it's a really beautiful one. Um, to help with parasympathetic state. Of course, if at any stage during the holds, especially at the end of the exhale, if you feel like you want to breathe in again, simply just breathe in. Um, there's no exam at the end of this, but if everyone does feel comfortable to do so, um, you're more than welcome to close your eyes. If you feel like you even want to switch off your video for the breathing aspect because you don't want to be watched, so to speak, please do. This is much more about feeling as comfortable as you possibly can. I say a lot to my clients that being comfortable is important whenever we're doing breath work. I want you to try to stay awake if possible. So don't get too cozy. Don't lie down and get under a duvet or anything. Do try to keep your spine straight where possible. All right. So with that said, if you allow the eyes to close, or if they're not going to close, just soften your gaze and look down. And I want you to feel the air coming in at the tip of your nose before we do anything else. And maybe you can acknowledge which nostril is more predominant on the intake of air. Sometimes it's the left nostril, sometimes it's the right nostril. There's a phenomenon known as nasal cycling. That means that your nostrils literally open and close like the petals of a flower throughout the day. Left nostril is linked into parasympathetic state and that rest and digest state, and your right nostril is linked into sympathetic and fight or flight and that go, go, go state. So see if you can tune in just for a moment and try to be really precise with this, which nostril you feel is taking in more air. And if you can imagine drawing a line from the tip of your nose to your left ear, And then bring all of your awareness to your left ear, as if you're listening to my voice through only your left ear. And then draw a line, an imaginary line from the left ear across to the right ear. See if you can measure that distance between your left ear and your right ear. And see if you can bring sensation to your right ear. Maybe it's the first time you've ever really thought about what your right ear feels like. Draw the line from the right ear up to the crown of the head. And the crown of the head is that soft spot that we come into this world with as a baby before it meshes over to become the highest point on your head. And then draw a line from the crown of the head to the base of the chin and see if you can tune in to where your tongue is sitting in your mouth. If you're holding any tension in your jaw. And then draw the line back up to the tip of the nose and breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the nose. And again, tune in to left nostril or right nostril. We're going to start the box breath. And that means you're just going to inhale when I guide it. You're going to hold whenever I guide it. Exhale and hold. So come with me when you're ready. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And exhale, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale through the nose. Hold your breath and notice if the shoulders have raised. Let them relax, let them soften. And then exhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. And hold your breath. Inhale through the nose. Fully let the belly fill. Hold your breath. Soften the shoulders and the skin around the sides of your eyes. Exhale for 2, 3, 4. And hold. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale, 2, 3. Hold. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Coming into the last 3 boxes. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Last one. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. Just allow yourself to come back into your natural rhythm of breath. Give yourself a moment simply to check in with how you're feeling.
Wow.
Lily, yeah, you
I
okay?
I need to make sure that I know that I'm hosting this. And I'm already feeling more grounded. I hope you all do too. Continue, please, Rob.
No, yeah, I'm glad you feel okay. This breath work, and some people might be sitting there going, "Oh, that was hard for me to get into." Others might feel that was, bliss. I need to do more of this. Both are correct, and neither are correct, if you know what I mean. It's the experience that you have within this type of work is all information. So a couple of things I would say about this particular breath is that the average adult breathes 14 breaths per minute. Now, some of you might have whoops or auras or these kind of wearable tech and smart tech that tells you what your respiration rate is, your respiratory rate. I would invite you to just measure it yourselves. I sometimes do it in groups. There's maybe just too many of us to kind of go through and talk, but how you measure your respiratory rate is simply, an inhale and an exhale is one, and count that over a minute just to kind of see where you are. I can work with clients and they can start off at 20, but generally it's important to say that for the most part, people overbreathe. We would generally classify about 95% of the population to be overbreathing, chronically overbreathing. It's called hyperventilation, chronic hyperventilation. And this has a huge physiological impact. So anywhere from 13 or 14, I would be trying to get clients down in the first place. And whenever we do this box breath, this in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. And of course, if 4 feels a wee bit too intense, you drop it. You just do 3, 3, 3, 3 around the box. And equally, vice versa. If things feel really nice, you can start to move it up. You go 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, etc., etc. And if you think about what we're doing just with that 4-second box, we breathe in for 4, we hold for 4, we exhale for 4, we hold for 4. This is a 16-second breath cycle. That's what, 3.5 breaths per minute, something like that, So if you're going from potentially 14 breaths per minute, I dare say that, amongst a group of, 20, 30, 40 people, you're going to have 5 or 6 who are quite high, significantly higher than that. If you can try to integrate practice like this for as little as, I would say, 3 minutes per day, you're starting to implement new neural pathways in your body to say that I breathe a little bit slower. The heart rate starts to come down, your heart rate variability, that HRV that I mentioned earlier on, all about the kind of strength of your robustness of your nervous system or your immune system and your emotional flexibility, that goes up. We want a high HRV, we want a low heart rate. Your resting heart rate goes down, your respiratory rate goes down. We want these things to be happening. We've now linked this into longevity of life and therefore making better decisions. If we're breathing in this way, the relationship between oxygen and carbon dioxide is the key thing whenever your body is trying to find homeostasis. And if we have enough carbon dioxide in our blood, oxygen is at its most optimal state to release. Whenever oxygen is getting released, it's going into your cells, your tissues, your muscles, your organs, your brain. The brain's the key one, of course, because this is what we want to be feeling really clear, to be feeling concise, to be being able to not take things as a threat, which then starts that whole kind of cortisol avalanche. So this simple breath, the fruit is in the practice, because the nervous system lives, or learns, I should say, through experience. Not just me, I suppose, explaining the concept of this. It learns through experience. The best way to do it is to take a bottom up approach to your practice, and that you're doing it from the body rather than from the mind. It's great. The upbringing that I had was extremely, I needed to understand it intellectually before I could dive into it.
Yeah.
Now my practice has changed in such that I lean more into that art of fulfillment rather than science of achievement. That kind of scale, I try to feel it first, but that had to come through understanding what was going on. So box breath, as little as 3 minutes per day, could be such a powerful experience for you over 3-4 weeks.
Well, the more we do this, the longer we are able to not age, I guess, because the more you breathe, the more you age.
Absolutely.
So
That's
that's
it's
that.
true that.
So, and by the way, I know you all have a lot of questions, so feel free to message in the chat box, and we'll monitor those as we go ahead, and we'll leave about 10 minutes towards the end for those questions. I certainly have quite a few, but I
Mhm.
realize the time as well, and I'm
Yeah.
just wondering. I mean, it's such a reset. Thank you, Rob.
Mhm.
Let's talk about world impact. Can you share a few case studies or success stories where your breathwork and coaching made measurable change in performance in or a team culture, for instance?
Yeah, so actually the company that I was just in with last week, I work with the CEO, and I have done now for about 14 months. We've been working together, and whenever I first started working with her, she's a powerful woman who um, leads a company of 1,000 people. Was one of the first, in fact, was the first female on the board of Porsche, the German car maker, and uh, has 3 children, an extremely busy life, lots of international travel, works extremely hard, works out extremely hard, plays extremely hard, like lives life at 100%. And initially came to me to talk about optimization, uh, which I already have a problem with. Because Formula One is optimization, and that gives us a very small margin of error. Whenever we crash, it's pretty big and it's pretty impactful.
Mm.
So I suppose, number one, and she said this on stage last week, so I don't mind sharing it now, that mindset was one of the biggest things for her without losing her edge, let's say. She has been able to think about her performance much more from the lens of capacity and resilience rather than optimizing absolutely everything that she does, because she realized the hard way, I suppose, that she couldn't go at 100% in every single pillar of her life for years and years and years and years. So we've been able to start with metrics, and this is where I love working with some of these kind of personalities, because a lot of these personalities, a lot of what I'm saying, I suppose, mindset and feeling state and internal state, it's all very abstract, isn't it? It's very subjective. Um, and uh, we started with metrics really with her. Heart rate variability was number one. That was in the teens. I can't um, labor the point enough that being in the teens is extremely bad. If we're talking about heart rate variability, it really your nervous system's right on the edge of sickness or illness, and you're not very tolerant, let's say. I mean, we can literally show a more calcified arteries whenever people are in have these particular biometrics, okay, biofeedback from this. So we have managed over 14 months to bring that from 18 to 80, which is a
Wow.
incredible response from her. With only she gave me in the first 6 months, Rob, I have 4 minutes a day to give to this practice. That's how much. She's only up to 8 minutes now. So another important point here is that I don't expect, or my objective with this work isn't for us all to head to the Himalayas and sit in a cave for 3 hours of meditation every morning, then quickly fly back and get on with our jobs. I understand that this type of work needs to be able to be integrated on the daily, whether that's with, as in my case, my 16-month-old son clambering at my headphones whenever I'm taking a call, or whether it is in the middle of a meeting or on the way to a meeting. So a lot of the practices that I worked with her on was, okay, how do we integrate this into your life of international travel, into your day, which is, literally kind of segmented off by the half hour, by the 30-minute blocks.
Mm.
And using just only a couple of practices initially, box breath being one of them, actually, we managed to get that heart rate variability up from 18 to 80, which is, huge in terms of her immune and nervous system. Uh, Naturally, the byproduct of this, what happens is the heart rate goes down. What happens whenever that happens? Like, this is where, the breath just, it allows a cascade of events to happen, both positively and negatively. So if we use it in the positive sense, lots of good things can happen off the back. And respiratory rate goes down, blood pressure goes down. Um, she felt more clear. She started to sleep better. Then we're talking about, stage 3 sleep as our performance enhancing drug. She feels more recovered whenever she woke up from a night's sleep. We implemented, mouth tape, which maybe some people have heard about, but you can wear like a 3 millimeter tape across the lips while you sleep to stop mouth breathing, because mouth breathing has been shown to really have a dysfunctional impact on your breath. And one of the best times to train that is, of course, your 7 or 8 hours, if we're lucky, that we get during sleep. So we did that. No, that's not for everyone. Sometimes people have an anatomical reason that they can't breathe so easily through their nose. It's not something I prescribe just to absolutely everybody. But it worked really, really, really well for her, just to use sleep as a recovery station, not just like a kind of passing out station where she was getting to. Uh, as a result, she felt better equipped, let's say, to deal with whenever she was feeling, particularly in Q4, whenever they had a lot of kind of big deadlines to meet, that she was a better leader. She used those words on stage on Tuesday in the O2 to 500 of her staff, that she genuinely felt more able to handle the stresses that were coming through. So that kind of whole journey with that client has been incredibly special.
Yeah.
Um, I work with a founder of a private equity firm who, uh, how did he put it? He said, Rob, what I've been able to do with all of this work is take a landscape look at myself and my life, um, just to give myself some internal space. And I love this concept of internal space because what I've found, I suppose, anecdotally across feedback, sometimes people feel very cluttered, decision fatigue, overwhelmed. Everybody wants something from me. I feel like I don't have enough space in the day, in my life, essentially in my body.
Yeah.
And as a result, just the fact that he felt that he could uh, he could take some of these techniques and create internal space, like space to actually think, to strategize, to be clear. And so it was a huge clarity piece
Yeah.
alongside the metrics that we would do the respiratory rate, the HRV, the resting heart rate, um, the heart rate, and so these are metrics that we can, very much black and white. We can plot them, and then we did stress scores. We did like these are subjective. I feel overwhelmed. I feel this, that, the other. One other,
Yeah.
I suppose, is around burnout. And there's a phenomenal tool that I use. It's public tool. It's not mine, but it's called the BAT Burnout Assessment Tool, and it's the BAT 23 and the BAT 12. And I use the BAT 12 actually with most of my clients. Uh,
Mhm.
it's just 12 questions that have a numerical value code off the back, but you add up those numbers, you give the client a traffic light essentially of where they are in the burnout scale. And then from that, I use a method that has come from pattern recognition uh, of working with healthcare workers who were suffering from burnout. And it sabers sleep, arousal management, breath work, rest, effort, and self esteem. It's the SABRES, sabers, um, my kind of burnout method that I use with clients. So that's sometimes what I use if I'm working with, let's say, the CEO or the leaders of the company. They sometimes like me to do some teamwork around that, and uh, that's essentially looking at each of those pillars. What does sleep mean to me? How do I optimize? How do I get it a little bit better? Arousal management. This is essentially what I was talking about earlier. Am I jumping out of bed, looking at the markets? Am I jumping in an ice bath? Am I then doing from meeting to meeting to meeting, then having a coffee, then not really having any downtime?
Mhm.
Breath work, obviously, it speaks for itself with me.
Ex-
Rest and effort. How much rest am I giving myself? And that's digital rest. I do thought leadership retreats, and one of the huge feedbacks that I get from my clients who come on the retreats, I make a lot of the times people, or sorry, I invite people to put their phone away for the entire trip. With maybe a 15-minute window where if they need to call home or whatever, and make sure nothing urgent is going on. And people dread this, people hate it at the beginning. And it's the one thing that comes at the end that people say, I didn't realize how much I needed that disconnection from that little phone. So digital rest, physical rest, emotional rest. Speak about this, effort, and then self-esteem, of course, how we talk to each other. Sorry, I realize I'm going on and on and on.
No, I love that. And actually, I go away for one weekend a month, and I do that
Mm,
purposely with intention, where I put away my laptop, my mobile phone, and I just concentrate on what I'm doing, nature, breath work, meditation, and it really does make all the difference. And for those who can afford it and do that, I highly, highly recommend that. And I'm still
mm.
waiting to go on one of your retreats, Rob. Just
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But just conscious of time, and I really want you to talk to us about your app before we move on to the
Oh,
questions. I
yeah.
see a lot of questions are coming through. Just tell us a little bit about your app and how that's going.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. The app, it was something that came from the What's Next. Whenever I was working with my clients, I do a lot of corporate work, and so they sometimes ask me to go away on off-sites and lead the wellness, let's say, across the 3 day, 4 day exec off-site they're having, or or indeed some companies they take their employees away for their high performers, and it's more of a there's not actually too much work during the 3 days or 4 days, so it's much more almost of a wellness program. And what we found across the board really was that there was huge interest in a lot of this work, but even as I can see through some of the questions there, there's sometimes um, not the know how to say, okay, but how do I then do this tomorrow whenever you're not on the Zoom talking to me, or taking me through this guided meditation. And I really wanted to build something that people could do for 2 minutes a day, as I said, up to deepening their practice up to 20 and 40 minutes a day. So it's something that I implement into the companies that I work with, that allows everyone to have a Rob in their pocket and to be able to use some of these techniques that are clinically backed, neuroscience backed. Psychologists are using NHS are now prescribing it. It's wonderful to see, but to actually put a little bit of a roadmap with it, because it's a bit like going to the gym sometimes and just picking up weights, and like the nuances in the practices, from holding a weight like this to holding a weight that can hurt your wrist. It's the same way sometimes with breath work, that there's so much information out there. You can Google everything. It's all free out there as well. But it's like, well, what actually suits me and what's best for me. So I kind of have pathways that people can go on. I'm a complete novice. I've never done this before. I only have 2 minutes a day to give. Okay, click on, kind of click on this button. Here's your next 10 days. And all you have to do is open the app on that day to get your 2 minute practice or your 5 minute practice. Um, yeah, breath movement, a little bit of movement. So some kind of morning stretches, some high intensity stuff, but nothing more than about 8 minutes, because I'm trying, I've very much built it with the employee and the person in mind who uh, doesn't have all day to give to a lot of this practice, but rather an entryway in. And then if they want to go deeper, they can, and I work with clients often to talk about an MVP, a minimum viable practice. Maybe that's your 2 minute practice, right through to I want to sustain this, to I want to go deeper and try to give them pathways into that. Mhm.
I love that. Thank you so much, Rob. And I'm just conscious of time. We will
Mm.
absolutely share how Rob can work with you and how Rob works in general through coaching, workshops, executive workshops. But there are a few questions here. One of them is from Tomoko. I'm interested in starting meditation. Would box breathing count as a form of meditation, Rob?
So this is a fantastic question. Okay, essentially, like if you look at like a map of meditation, like the world of meditation, you've kind of got three main ones. Okay, you've got investigatory meditation, you've got attentional meditation, and then you've got what are called constructive meditation. I'm not going to touch too much on the kind of investigatory and the constructive, because where most people start is that initial attentional, and that essentially means giving the person an objective focus, focusing their attention. Okay,
Mm.
so and we use the breath as one of those ways. Of course, you're giving the brain of the person something to anchor onto. That's why you might have seen, candlelight meditations, or look at an object that you really value, or of course the object of breath. Breathe in and feel. I did a little bit of this 3D meditation at the beginning of the box breath. Feeling it at the nostrils of your nose. I'm starting to try to cultivate a practice of interoception. So a very short answer to Moko, which was a great question, is no, it's not necessarily meditation as such. However, it would be counted as an attentional meditation if it was going to be any. But breath work, I would make a distinction between the two. Breath work for me is providing the best conditions to your brain and your body to allow you to enter into the meditative state. And we've seen I'm really lucky to kind of be privy to research and patients, I suppose, who are linked up to EEG scans, so we can see what's happening with the brainwave during these particular practices. And we can see the brainwave changing from beta to alpha and gamma, which are considered more slow wave states and meditative states, which allow us to be more open to essentially the nature of reality and the experience that we're having. So these breathworks change the brain waves to allow us to get into that state, which means an attentional meditation, an investigative meditation, or a constructive meditation can be a lot more impactful or efficient, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
There is another, it certainly makes sense to me, but again, if there is feedback, please do contact us and I'll put you in touch with Rob, give you his email address and share his website. There is one question, we've only got time for one more, but
Mm.
I found that quite interesting. So it's from Kerry, the box method is great. It seems to provide clarity. Um, but when I do the reset, I realize I'm actually very anxious. How do I lead myself out of that? Because the awareness of that seems to, I suppose, focus the anxiety, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Number one, I would say that like anxiety, it occupies the same neural pathways as excitement. Would you believe? So it's the anxiety and excitement, or any of these emotions, they're physical sensations within the body to which we have a pretty negative connotation. You know, we create the story around the physical sensation that we're feeling of, oh, I don't like this feeling of anxiety. I often ask my clients to sit with that feeling of anxiety, that exact feeling of anxiety. And I sometimes give breath works that I know are going to move the person's physiology towards that high heart rate, the feeling of kind of the beating of the chest. It's called control work, actually, or hormesis, hormetic stress, exposing the person to an element of stress in a safe way that they start to realize that they can actually handle that space. Whenever we do any of this type of work, it's very, very common for the noise to subside in the nervous system, for you to genuinely feel, oh, now the anxiety is coming. But I would invite the anxiety from a sense of, okay, so the signal that I'm picking up here is anxiety. What what is the underlying aspect of that? Am I feeling like I've got 65 emails in my in my inbox that I haven't got through? Am I feeling anxious about something that's next Tuesday? Am I feeling anxious about something that someone said 4 days ago? You know, I don't see any of these emotions as bad or inherently negative. And this can be an extremely liberating and powerful space to be whenever you feel equipped and resourced and resilient enough to sit with that feeling of anxiety. I what I would be saying to you, Kerry, is that it's not necessarily something to run away from. It's something to be able to sit with, because whenever we sit with it, it can dissipate the feeling.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I'm just seeing more feedback and more questions, and I'm gonna make sure I'll pass those over to you, Rob, at on another medium, to answer them. But thank you so much, Rob.
Mm.
And I mean, it's incredible to have had you join us here at the Global Chamber. It's been so inspiring to set the tone for 2026. And I want to thank everybody for joining us as well today. I truly believe that how we manage our energy is how we shape our leadership. And this work, breath, nervous system awareness, emotional precision, it's not a luxury, it's truly leadership. So for those of you who are interested in bringing Rob into your organization, practicing breath work, either in the UK, globally, in the GCC, you can reach out directly, and I will send you all the details that you need to do exactly that. And we'll follow up after the session with key details and the contact information. So, Rob, again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much to everybody for staying with me and for the questions. And yeah, I love speaking about all this. So I'm sorry I feel like I didn't get half of it all out, but yeah,
There's
but
so
please
much.
do let me know. And thank you, Zainab, for hosting and bringing together such a wonderful group.
Thank you so much. And I'm wishing you all a power, performance, and peace
Mhm.
for 2026. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.